Welcome back to Virteva's Let's Talk podcast, a show that analyzes the newest technologies in Microsoft Cloud and how to manage the use of those technologies to help your business teams be successful. My name is Scott Ledwan, and it's episode 14. In this week's episode, we're actually coming to you live from Seattle, Washington at Microsoft Ignite 2023. I just left the first day of the keynotes, breakout sessions. I've gone to a bunch of demos, had an opportunity to meet a couple podcast listeners, connect with some old colleagues out here. It's been a blast. Today, really for this podcast, I want to take the opportunity to break down some of the major announcements that were talked through in the first day of keynotes. There's another day of keynotes tomorrow that's going to kind of continue to focus in on more of, if you had a bingo card ready for Microsoft Ignite, you just had AI in every slot across the bingo card. That is essentially what most of today was, is how does Microsoft fold AI into more and more of its products? And we'll be talking about that today on the show. There is now we've been talking about role-based co-pilots on the show for the past few shows now, and there is really a co-pilot for everything now. So to start off the show, let's kind of go through the keynote based on what was announced in the order it was announced, and then we'll kind of talk a little bit more in depth on some of the items that I thought, at least from a modern work and a security perspective, they're going to be the most critical for most businesses. So the keynote started off with Satya Nadella taking the stage and talking about a brand new kind of custom in-house CPU series, which is called Azure Cobalt 100. This is Microsoft's kind of first CPU design specifically for Microsoft Cloud. It's 64-bit with a 128-core ARM-based chipset, and it is the fastest cloud processor. And it's already out there powering a lot of the different Microsoft Teams Azure communication services, as well as Azure SQL. And they're planning on bringing this to customer availability starting next year. Satya also introduced its first preview look at Azure Confidential GPUs. And they're partnering with NVIDIA on this to run AI models on sensitive data sets through Microsoft's cloud. They had Jensen from NVIDIA kind of come up on the stage in his classic leather bomber jacket that he wears to all of the NVIDIA keynotes. It's kind of an iconic jacket for the folks that follow NVIDIA or follow gaming and the stuff that they're doing on the other side. Jensen really broke down, and he talked about the partnership that they have with Microsoft and how NVIDIA is providing the hardware for Microsoft, and then Microsoft is providing the stack software for NVIDIA, and how they're really in this together. Both the announcements kind of were pointing a little bit more in the direction of talking about AI accelerators and the introduction of a new chipset called Azure Maya. Really, as we kind of move past these pieces, and something that's worth noting is that as they were talking about all the hardware and the AI chips and the Azure services and the NVIDIA services, is there was several points as these conversations were going on that the audience was just kind of speechless. I don't know if it was technically over a lot of people's heads in there, or there was just a lack of interest on it, and they really wanted to get more focused in on kind of modern work and security. But there was definitely more than one occasion where there was kind of some forced like clapping by the speakers. Satya had to kind of push Jensen off stage so he could kind of get back into talking about the other pieces of the keynote. The first 15 minutes of announcements were on the CPUs, then led into Jensen coming on stage. Once Jensen was on stage, he kind of took over the mic from Satya, and he just kind of continued to go and go and go up into the point where he kind of got like the wooden hook back from like a vaudeville musical to kind of get pulled out of there. But all very interesting stuff. If you are interested in hardware and Azure architecture, in just NVIDIA and what they're doing with building out the hardware for Microsoft, the hardware for gaming, etc., I highly encourage you to go back and watch this part of the keynote. But for our listeners specifically, there's a lot of very, very technical information that was shared here that it would take 2 hours to break down. So I'm going to move on to the next piece of the conversation, which is talking about Azure AI Studio. And this is something that's been out there for a while now, but they're adding more kind of power behind the scenes to it. So we're talking about kind of full life cycle tool chain, where you'll be able to build, customize, train, evaluate, and deploy the latest generation models such as ChatGPT 4 Turbo. And then it also includes through Azure's AI service, built-in safety tooling, which is meant to kind of look at what you're building in your large language models, look to see if there's anything malicious or harmful in that generated content, and then meant to help you kind of remediate that and communicate it around it as, again, it's another service piece of kind of like the Azure AI ecosystem. So that being said, those were kind of the big Azure announcements that came out of it around chipset and just technology improvements. And again, I highly advise you if that's something that you're really interested in. There's a lot more there that I'm not going to go into a ton of detail here today. So the next big thing worth talking about is Microsoft Mesh, which was announced at Ignite, I want to say 2 to 3 years ago. And we haven't really heard as much about it recently, those 3D immersive spaces that you can use, the Microsoft HoloLens headset or the Meta Quest headsets. It kind of got quiet. This was something that came out of, I want to say that it was invented because of the pandemic to help people kind of come together more and work together, where we were all kind of locked up in our homes. We were working remotely. But as we started to kind of move back to hybrid and move back into the offices, there wasn't really a whole lot of conversation around it anymore. And then suddenly over the last 6 months, we saw avatars come out. And honestly, I think a lot of us looked at Microsoft Teams avatars and we thought, oh, well, they didn't want to give up on all that work that they did. There was a lot of time investment. A lot of people spent a lot of money kind of building those avatars, building those reactions. And we thought that, oh, well, the avatars are there. If people want to use them, fantastic. But Mesh will kind of be an afterthought. Mesh really does not seem like it's an afterthought anymore. In the keynote, they talked about the ability to use custom immersive spaces, which if you're in the preview version of Teams Premium or just Teams in general, and you want to try that out today, it is actually available under the view option. I was playing with that a little bit in the hotel room earlier, and you can kind of walk around a different scene. You can't actually see your character, but you can see others around you, so it might be something worth investigating with your team members. But there's music, there's ambience in there. So I walked up to a fireplace and I could hear the fire crackling. It gives you the option to sit down on the bench. You can roast marshmallows. You can kind of throw marshmallows into the fire. It looked like it was giving me the option to do. But this is a neat kind of immersive experience, just from the team side that can help bring teams together, especially when working remotely. And it's instead of you looking at 3 or 9 or 16 block windows of just people sitting in rooms. Instead, you can kind of bring them all together using the team's avatars. And then as an added bonus to that is if you do have the headset for that, is you can toss that on and you get even more of an immersive experience. More on that outside of the team's angle is, and I think that this is really the big play, and I've been saying this for a number of years now, is that while VR seemed like it was going to be the big draw, I think that augmented reality, where you're able to kind of see your surroundings and interact with that with kind of like tabletop windows, the ability to kind of move things around, or if you're at a location that's 16,000 miles across the world from the person that you're talking to, and they need to see what you're working on, is you'll have the headset on in front of you, and then there'll be kind of like an augmented like gear or a space in front of you that both of you can see, and maybe that person has more subject matter expert knowledge on what you need to do if you're in a factory fixing something, is you'll both be able to see that part, and that person on the other side will be able to tell you, oh, you need to turn it to the right, you need to insert this here. So there's a lot of, I think, promise in augmented reality. And again, with Teams Mesh, it's not just those immersive experiences in Microsoft Teams. It's more than that. It's building out these unique types of situations where you can use augmented reality. They also talked about adding Copilot into this. There's some videos, some B-roll that I'll include in the video version of this for YouTube, that you can see the person actually talking to Copilot. Copilot is answering questions on the fly through generative AI in the background. So there's examples of, hey, what's the tolerance on this part? What's the torque? Can you give me the specifications? Can you help me order a part because we're out of it right now? Submit the order, and it'll do all that stuff without you actually needing to be in front of a computer. It felt very kind of like Iron Man 1, Iron Man 2, kind of like Jarvis interface with Robert Downey Jr. talking to his AI in the suit and asking it for help doing things. Um, this this could be very promising as the future. I'm sure that there will be a cost associated with that type of Copilot interaction, but this again is it's showing the power of not only the large language model to be able to answer questions and pull information out of knowledge bases, but it's also adding a lot of value to these specific kind of like niche situations where there's someone on the other side of the world that needs to work with you to fix a problem because your production line is broken. And this is probably one of the highlights of the keynote for me today, just due to the fact that that's going to add a lot of value, and it's really going to change the way that we work, especially in different remote locations. All right, so enough about Microsoft Mesh. Let's talk about some of the big Copilot announcements. So we talked on the show a couple weeks ago on the audio-only version that Holly and I were going to be getting together soon to kind of do a becoming a prompt expert with using Bing Chat Enterprise and just ChatGPT in general. And I'm kind of glad that we held off on the show. We're planning on doing that in December, but they changed the name of Bing Chat and Bing Chat Enterprise, and I had kind of heard through different folks on Twitter or X that a last-minute decision was made to rename the product. It sounded like they were going to rename it to Microsoft Copilot and Microsoft Copilot Pro, which would have been the Bing Chat Enterprise version of it. And instead, they are just calling Bing Chat Microsoft Copilot now. So again, in some of the demos that they showed, if you were just using the consumer version and you don't have a license for it, you absolutely can still use it. It's just being called Microsoft Copilot at this point. Not to be confused with Copilot for Windows 11, which is also called Windows Copilot, but Copilot will work in bing.com/chat. It will also work through your web browser. So they were touting here is because obviously they want you to use Edge. Edge is their baby, and they cannot throw more stuff up in your face about not using Chrome or Firefox. But it will work in Firefox. It will work in Chrome. It will also work in Windows 11 Copilot. So if you open that up, holding the keys or using it off your taskbar, if you have a new version of Windows 11 and you've updated that, is you have the option now to actually integrate Windows 11 Copilot with the web, so it'll pull in results. And I think that makes a lot of sense because they were calling Copilot in Windows 11. They had recently renamed it just to Windows Copilot, and now they're calling Bing Chat Copilot. So I think that's kind of a no-brainer there. Again, super glad that Holly and I hadn't had the chance to do that show yet. I just checked recently. I went to Bing Chat Enterprise, and it is still showing as Bing Chat Enterprise for me, but that rebranding is going to be coming any day now. So That's going to be really cool. Again, if you don't have Copilot licenses yet, and you want to introduce your employees to using generative AI, you should absolutely turn this on in your environment, because especially if you have an E3 or an E5 license or a business standard business premium license, is you are getting that commercial data protection under it. You don't want your employees going out and using just the consumer version of Bing Chat. You don't want them going out there and using ChatGPT or Google Bard or the dozens of other large language models that are popping up out there, because if they type in something sensitive, I'm not saying with certainty that your information, your sensitive business facing information may leak out to the internet, but there is a very good shot that it could. And who knows what malicious parties may do with that. So I implore you, you should be using the Microsoft version of this if you have the license of it through Bing Chat Enterprise or now Microsoft Copilot. All right, next big announcement here, Copilot Studio. So again, this stuff actually started leaking kind of late last week. And this is, while it almost kind of feels like a rebranding of the Power Platform, I haven't seen it officially called out that it is a rebranding of the Power Platform. What Copilot Studio is it's built out there to help you create GPT plugins. OpenAI had an event last week talking about almost this exact same thing, about how they're encouraging people to go in and start developing their own GPT-style plugins. This is the same thing that Microsoft is allowing you to do. They talked about it back in May at their Build event. There's already a lot of plugins out there that work today. SAP, ServiceNow, Jira, there's tons of stuff already being built. I want to say that I took a note down that there's over 1,000 plugins available out there right now. And I'm sure that they vary in quality, and some of them are just, oh, hey, we built a plugin so it could be there. But the plan is we'll go back and we'll do more work on that. But for developers and different businesses that are out there that want to actually put the time into building some of this stuff, with the way that it actually ties into Microsoft Fabric now, which also hit general availability, that was announced today. So that's super cool. Is you'll be able to build your own plugins. You'll be able to use Microsoft Fabric to pull from your own data in your tenant. And then kind of like, hey, I'm going to build a revenue report so I can go in here and I can ask Copilot, hey, how much money did we make last year, the year before, 10 years ago, depending on what information's in there. Can you build me tables in either Power BI or in Microsoft Excel? Microsoft Excel now has Python support built into it as well, which is another really intriguing thing that they've built into Excel. And again, this is large language models generally have had a problem with mathematics, and building out Python and adding that into Excel is really improving on that mathematical computational problem that these large language models have had. And I think that that's going to go a long way, especially for business intelligence teams or business analysts that might be doing a lot of data scrubbing. It's going to make their lives easier. What I'm hopeful for, and again, Microsoft always says that Copilot is not intended to be autopilot and replace people's jobs. But one kind of stark thing that you can read through the lines on this is if you're just querying a chatbot that knows how to do a lot of this stuff, do we see a reduction in business intelligence analysts in the future? Or do we see those business intelligence analysts have more time on their hands to do other things, like maybe do more speaking events, do more videos, or just dive in and start thinking about what's the next big thing that we can really kind of apply our skill set to. But yeah, that was really interesting. And I think that as we continue to see these large language models evolve, we'll see more and more stuff building out in those areas. There were some brief mentions in the keynote speeches this morning for the first 2 hours around Security Copilot and where that's going and where that is today. We also talked a little bit about it in the most recent Virteva newsletter. So I won't spend a whole lot of time on it, but really one of the big things that they're digging in on is Microsoft Defender for 365 XDR, which by the way is being rebranded to just Microsoft Defender XDR, and how Copilot will interact with that data and Intune and Security Copilot to be able to provide you more information at your fingertips when you build those prompts or those queries into Copilot. Finally, and I say finally, but there's probably a lot more Copilot news that I haven't talked about yet, is we're seeing more and more information start to come out around additional Copilots. So they announced today Copilot for Sales or Sales Copilot, which has been known about for a while now. It's not a big announcement. I want to say that looking at the stats, and I'll put those up on the screen now, the table that they showed is that that's kind of their first attachment into kind of more CRM in Dynamics 365 and sales. And they're seeing more turnaround that Microsoft really kind of promoted that they've been using this internally, and they've seen a lot of positivity around growth in sales and making their salespeople's jobs easier. The pricing on that is pretty expensive from what I recall, and I could be wrong on it. If I am, the graphic will be on the screen. But I believe that it was $50 per user per month. That is not the same thing as Microsoft 365 Copilot. That is not the same thing as Microsoft Security Copilot. Not the same thing as Teams Premium either. Again, these are role-based Copilots, so you're going to get a Copilot that's right for the right team. And I think that in Microsoft's anticipation here is you're going to buy multiple Copilots, which will become expensive for most organizations, especially the smaller to medium-sized ones. But I mean, again, there is a lot of value in these Copilots, and that's what Microsoft is really trying to latch onto to get more organizations to use them. The other big Copilot announcement that came out of today was Copilot for Service, which I am certain was another one of the $50 per user per month ones. And what this one is for is it is for customer service representatives. So think about you have someone in your customer service team answering the phone. The example that they gave was a customer called in and they said that, hey, I ordered this tent from your website. The tent came damaged. I need this tent for my camping trip. It's happening this weekend. I need help. What can you do? And all you do is you have your window open, your CSM interface, whether that be Microsoft Teams or whatever you're using, and it can look at the message, whether it be an email or a forum post or however you're using it. It pulls that data out, it looks at it, it analyzes it, and it said, hey, here's some knowledge-based articles that can help you answer this faster. If your customer service representative has a question on it, they can then ask it. So they say, well, what's the warranty policy? That didn't come up in the knowledge documentation. It'll instantly go out there. It'll look at the content that you've made available to it. And then it'll say the warranty period is 1 year. So absolutely, in this case, the customer is right that they should be able to get another one. And then it'll also allow you to generate an invoice or void that invoice and be able to send that new product out. It'll give you all the shipping information that you need. And then you can verify all that with the customer. It'll help you draft an email to the customer. It'll help you adjust the tone of the email for the customer. And then it'll send it out, and then they can also integrate that in with something like their CRM system, like a Salesforce or a Dynamics, to close the case out and move on to the next one. So again, this is a great example of where Copilot is aiding the worker in their job. It's not replacing the worker in their job. And there's a lot of value here. So if you're a new business or you're a very large business and you've been having a lot of problems with maybe turnover, or maybe you've been having a lot of problems with just customer satisfaction or long wait times to get answers, like the large language models, the generative AI is going to be very helpful in improving on those problems by speeding up processes behind the scenes. All right, so those are kind of the big keynote announcements. I wanted to go into a little bit more detail on some of the other pieces that came out of different events that I sat in here. We'll talk about the work trend index here that Microsoft talked about during the keynotes as well. So Microsoft has been running a keynote for the folks that have been using the key parts of Copilot, Microsoft 365 Copilot for the past however many months, 8 to 12 months that has been available. Key stats that they rattled off, they said 70% of Copilot users said that they were more productive, and 68% said that it improved their quality of work. Again, we were just kind of talking about that example with the Copilot as a service. 68% say it helped jumpstart their creativity process. I'll be perfectly honest. Just from a ChatGPT, Bing Chat Enterprise, or Microsoft Copilot, is a lot of times when I'm experiencing a writer's block, is GPT can help me get past that writer's block by me prompting it in the right ways, and then it kind of feeding back some ideas to kind of get my brain kick started. So a lot of useful stuff there. Overall, Microsoft is saying that some of the feedback that they got from their users led them to the stat of 29%. Users are able to complete tasks 29% faster, such as searching, writing, summarizing, kind of like the example that I just gave. Users also felt like they were able to get caught up on meetings 4 times faster. I'm not sure what the percentage number on that is. But again, if you only were able to attend half a meeting, or you were only able to attend the last 10 minutes of a meeting, is Copilot can help summarize that stuff for you. 64% of the users said that Copilot helps them spend less time processing emails. 87% of users said Copilot makes it easier to get started on a first draft. Again, that is great. A great use of Copilot that I found very useful for myself just through using generative AI is being able to say, hey, these are the things that we need to talk about in a document. Can you help me lay out the most logical way that it should fit into a document and will be easy for the customer to kind of read and breathe that in. 75% of users say that it saves me time by finding whatever I need in my files. I haven't had that experience myself, and I've kind of heard back and forth on sometimes it's very useful, other times it's not. I think semantic indexing plays a gigantic role in this, as does labeling your files, file encryption, setting policies behind the scene in Purview. But I can certainly see that if you're saying, hey, I need to find this, traditionally Delve has been the way that I've been able to do this, or portal.office.com. If you're looking for a file that you were looking at 4.5 weeks ago and you haven't seen it since, but Copilot is aiming to improve on that. And then the key stat here, 77% of users said once they use Copilot, they don't want to give it up. It's an interesting stat. I can see that if it is being very helpful for you as a user, of course you don't want to give it up. It's making all these end user improvements, making your life easier, making you more efficient, making you better at your job. Why would you want to give that up? Again, this is the user's perspective on it. The users aren't necessarily the ones paying the bill on it. And I think that that is, over time, since this is brand new, I had the opportunity to sit in on a Copilot adoption, meeting today with Matt Wade from Job 365, and the take on this is that all of this is brand new. Copilot, like, there's never been anything like this before. A lot of people are comparing this to like the release of the internet in the late 90s, early 2000s, the release of the iPhone. Like, No one's ever done any of this before. No one, who would have thought 15 years ago, 10, 20 years ago, that video calling would be a thing that we'd all be doing. Like I'm walking around the conference hall. I'm walking around Seattle this week, and I see people holding phones up in front of their faces and just video chatting, walking around. Like 20 years ago, no one would have thought that that was a thing. So with Copilot, it's really hard to understand the value in it. I think that there's a lot of value in it, but it's really hard to understand like the overall efficiency a business is going to see. And that's just something that's going to be measured out over time, over the next 6 to 12 months, as more and more people kind of get their hands on it. We talked about the Azure Maya AI accelerator chips and Azure Cobalt ARM architecture, so I'm not going to go too much more into that. There was also the announcement, general availability of Azure Boost, which is a system that makes storage and networking faster by moving processes off the host servers onto purpose-built hardware and software. We talked about a lot of the extending the Copilot experience, but again, I'll kind of just rehash. So there's Microsoft Copilot for Microsoft 365. There's Copilot Studio, which is again that AI transformation that begins by I'm reading off the page here, by tapping into an organization's unique data and workflows. Again, that's going to be your back-end developers that are doing a lot of work kind of in the Power Platform today and building plugins using GPT. Copilot for service, this is what we just talked about for customer service representative. Copilot in Dynamics 365 guides. I didn't really cover this one a whole lot. This is kind of tapping into kind of HoloLens 2 and the hands-free Copilot with the help in service industry professionals. So we spent some time talking about like working across the globe and interacting back and forth, and then having Copilot there to kind of answer your questions. This is really neat, and I'm not going to spend a whole lot more time talking about it on the podcast this week at least, but I implore you, take a look at this stuff. This is really cool, especially if you're in the manufacturing space or you're in kind of like the back end, kind of like retail, shipping, maybe even the food industry. Like there's a lot of use cases here. If you are a business that is willing to invest in not only the Copilot and the Dynamics piece of it, but also a AR headset such as a HoloLens. Copilot for Azure. This is your AI companion for IT teams that simplifies day-to-day IT administration. Gives you that unified chat experience that understands the user's roles and goals. Helps you design, operate, and troubleshoot apps in your infrastructure. Gives your teams additional insights in the workloads and helps you kind of unlock those untapped Azure functionalities and tasks out there for both cloud and edge. And then really Copilot for everyone. So Copilot for everyone, and again, this is what I was talking about kind of at the top of the show, is that Bing Chat and Bing Chat Enterprise piece is for Bing Chat. Anybody can use it, and everybody should absolutely take the time and spend some time actually investigating it and getting kind of acclimated to it, because this is really your entrance to ChatGPT. They also announced as part of this, and this is so part of the problems with a lot of the GPT systems that have been out there, such as OpenAI, is that there's a cutoff date of like it was initially like March of 2021, and now it's September of or May of this previous year. And OpenAI is continuing to get better on that. One of the things that's coming with Microsoft 365 Copilot is also the ability to be able to take advantage of kind of that Bing integration into it. So whereas there's a cutoff date, you can go into your admin portal and you can allow connectivity out to the internet. So you can actually pull in more data using kind of those Bing APIs. So that you don't feel like you're hitting that wall as much. I mean, there is a lot more that comes with doing that and doing those configuration pieces. And again, It's very easy to turn on Microsoft Copilot 365 or 365 Copilot. It is not easy to get your environment ready for it. There are a lot of things that you need to take into account from a change management perspective. There's a lot of stuff that you need to take into account from a security perspective, is making sure that you're not oversharing. This tool's not going to do that for you. So if someone has access to everything in your organization, and you have sensitive documents sitting in a legal folder that they wouldn't have previously known existed because it was 50 files deep in someone's OneDrive or a SharePoint site, but then they do a search and then suddenly it's there and they know that it's there. So it is critical that not only your different departments, but also your security teams, your compliance teams, your legal teams, you're all sitting down and you're having thoughtful conversations about containing all of this with labeling, file encryption, and making sure that people have the right amount of access, but not too much access. So, yeah, Copilot it's going to be a challenge for a lot of organizations, because the organizations that we work with, there's a lot of bad file sharing out there. There's a lot of organizations that we work with that will help them do a file migration from on-prem to SharePoint. And we'll bring that stuff over and we will have thoughtful conversations with them and say that, hey, we want to pick up this data and we want to only lift up the really important stuff that you're actually using rather than just doing a full lift and move to cloud. And we want to set up the right teams and the right permissions and make sure that the right people are in the right groups to have access to the data. We don't just want to put it all into one big SharePoint site, but you're going to find organizations that we don't work with, and sometimes even we do, that they just say, no, we'll do that later. And don't do it later. Do it as soon as you can. Even if you're not planning on bringing Copilot into your environment, you should be putting up walls around your data to make sure that the right people have access to it and only those people have access to it. All right. So yeah, we talked about Microsoft Fabric going to general availability. Another note there is that there's 25,000 customers, including Milliman, Zeiss, London Stock Exchange, that are using it today. There was quite a few others that I wrote down, but those are some of the big ones that are referenced in this article. Quite a few other pieces that are referenced in just other things I'm not going to spend a whole lot of time talking about, but we talked a little bit about GPT-4 Turbo with Vision, which is coming to preview, and DALL-E 3 is going to be available under that. So we're using the Azure OpenAI service. You'll have the ability to search by images, which is really cool. You can create images today with Bing Chat, but you can't necessarily do full-on searches. So that's going to be something that's interesting that comes out of that. Interesting to see how that pans out over time. Microsoft talked a little bit about introducing new experiences for Windows. So there is a new mobile app out there now that will allow you to connect to Windows 11 and Windows 365 virtual machines out there. They talked a little bit about Windows 11 boot to PC as well. It's just being called Windows Boot now, which essentially, if you're deploying an asset to a employee within your organization, or say they're doing bring their own device, is they can use the Windows 365 app to access that. Or if you want to give them kind of like a stripped down PC that doesn't really have a whole lot of hefty specs on it, but you want to give them a more powerful Windows 365 VM, and you don't want them to boot into the regular PC, you just want them to go straight to their cloud PC, there is the availability to configure devices to do that now. We talked about, again, a little bit earlier, Microsoft Sentinel and Microsoft Defender XDR, previously Microsoft 365 Defender. Those are being combined into a unified security operations platform, which is embedded into Security Copilot. Again, I talked about this a little bit in the newsletter. I think that is going to be super cool for organizations that are using Security Copilot. So instead of having to dip back and forth through all the different blades that are out there, whether it be an Entra ID or Microsoft Intune or Microsoft Defender, Security Center. All that stuff's going to be right up in front of you. Talked about that on the last podcast. But yeah, that's really exciting for security teams. It's going to make them a lot more efficient, especially with the addition of getting Microsoft Defender threat intelligence premium included with that as well. All right, so I think I covered for the most part a lot of the big announcements. So a couple other small ones that were interesting out there. So Clipchamp and Designer has now rolled out to enterprise customers. Clipchamp, for those of you that are unaware, is a web-based video editing application. Microsoft bought Clipchamp a few years ago. There's been a version out there available on the Windows Store for just regular kind of consumer users, but now they're rolling it out to enterprise and business standard and premium customers. A couple of different customers that have adopted it, Advent Health, Renaissance, Murex. I've talked about this a little bit on the show before, and I actually use this to edit some of our podcast content and just videos in general for some of the crash courses that we do. With the premium edition of this, commercial customers are going to be able to take advantage of 4K exports, brand kits, which uses your company's specific fonts, colors, logos, premium stock content. And then, so premium stock content is images, videos, audio. So you get your background music, you get stock images off it, you get access to more kind of like gifts and stickers and stamps and stuff like that. And then you also get access to kind of like that. If you ever watched a YouTube video of someone talking over just kind of like obviously canned videos of stock image, this is kind of going to do the same thing for you. And then from an enterprise perspective is advanced analytics with Microsoft Stream. So you'll be able to get a better look at kind of like video level metrics to help you engage and improve your output by tracking. Hey, how long does someone watch a video? Did they just skip to this part? Did they go to the end? Did they play it at a certain speed? All stuff that YouTube kind of does today. Again, I don't necessarily think that Clipchamp is going to be a full service video editing service like something like an Adobe Premiere or an Avid Express, Apple's Final Cut Pro. It's not the same thing. But if you are looking for a lower tier video editing program, and you want to pay a little bit for that add-on, Clipchamp Premium is going to be available as an add-on for $5 per user through per month through June 30th next year. And then it's going to go up to $7 per user per month. So you are getting Clipchamp integration with your E3 and your E5 license. I just want to make sure that no one's confused about that. But if you do want to take advantage of some of the additional pieces that are coming with that, it is a separate SKU. So again, the standard SKU is going to be $3 per user per month. And then the premium SKU is going to be that $7 per user per month, which is eventually going to end up going up to $10 per user per month. I'll put a chart on the screen here because it is a little bit more complicated. When it first got announced, as we expected that it was going to come to all E3 and E5 customers. But it's going to be included with your licensing. You'll obviously be able to sync it up to your OneDrive to keep all your stuff in one place. But if you do want to take advantage of some of that more premium level content, there is going to be an additional cost to it that you'll have to pay, which in most cases you're probably only going to end up having one or two people doing video editing on your staff that would want to take advantage of that stuff. But certainly worth exploring and playing around with to see if it is, something that you're interested in. And then the designer piece of it is Designer is something that has been in preview for a while now for commercial customers. Again, it is powered by that DALL-E 3 engine on the background for image manipulation. Personally, the amount of time that I've spent with it hasn't been a ton, and that is mostly influenced by that when I was using it to prompt and say, hey, can you build me an image that looks like this with this backdrop and this color scheme? Is it just the images that it designed, they were all right, but they weren't enough for me to want to go in and say, hey, I'm going to take this image and put it into a PowerPoint, and it's going to look professional and it's really going to wow someone. Microsoft did an example at the keynote today. They needed to add a tent, so they used Designer, which Designer can now also kind of feed into your own kind of like content management system, where you may have all of your own kind of company or your organization's graphics built out into one spot. So rather than just go to the web, it can pull from that library as well. And then you can kind of do designing and tweaks around that as well. So that stuff, all real neat. Kind of a little bit bummed that there's the additional upsell with the Clipchamp Premium, because I do think that it would be really great to be able to pull from more of those content sources. But again, if you were looking for kind of a basic tier video editing solution that's better than iMovie and better than the old kind of like Windows Movie Maker, Clipchamp can do a lot of that stuff. It is not without its own kind of technical speed bumps from my experience using it. But again, it's something that's going to be included with your license, at least at the basic level. And then if you want to take advantage of the extra stuff, you can certainly pay kind of those low cost upgrades for those one or two people that would be using it. A new Microsoft Planner was also announced today. And when I say new Microsoft Planner, I really kind of just mean that they are giving it kind of a visual refresh. They're adding in more functionality to it. They're adding in the power of Copilot with it. So Microsoft is saying that you can manage all your tasks in one place. It has Loop integration built into it. There are more kind of the premium Copilot-based templates being built into it now. Again, you'll have to subscribe to Copilot to be able to get that stuff. Again, visual redesign in some areas, in some others, it looks pretty much as it does today. I have seen that there is kind of a visually refreshed icon floating around out there that has kind of like more of like almost like a kind of like a spectrum type color palette to it, where it's a lot of different colors. If you have been using in your organization tasks for Planner in Microsoft Teams, that app has gotten a lot better over time. One of the biggest kind of comments that I would get on that app specifically is like, why can't it To-Do can see my flagged emails? Why can't tasks and Teams or tasks for Planner do it? That's been built into it in recent weeks. The ability, again, more options are coming with the premium pieces. It's not, Planner is not a Microsoft project replacement, but it is getting to the point, especially with kind of like this more premium look and feel to it, is that more and more stuff is being added to it. More fields are being added to it. It's really empowering users that are kind of on that project management light edge to get more towards that intermediate level. Another big piece, and we talked about this, integrations is a huge piece. So it's going to have integration with Microsoft Loop, Microsoft Outlook, Viva Goals, and Teams. The integration, arguably, you could say is already in Teams today, but it's going to be a little bit more powerful. Planner also has recently been added into whiteboard functionality as well. Rollout timeline on that. So November this month, Task by Planner and To-Do app and Teams is going to be renamed to Planner instead of the confusing Tasks by Planner name and To-Do. In spring of 24, which is 4 or 5, 6 months away at this point, the new Planner app and Teams is going to be generally available, which is going to have a lot of those refreshes built into it. Microsoft Project for the web is also going to be renamed to Planner. Do not let that fool you into thinking that Planner has become Project. It has not become Project. Project for the web has always been a little bit more lightweight than the full version of Project. There's still active development happening on that larger version of the desktop app of Project. But Project for the web is, again, it's a great utility tool, and I'm glad to see that they're taking a lot of the stuff that made Project for the web great and inserting it into Planner, and taking some of the stuff that made Planner great and inserting it into Project for the web. All right, so this was one of the other ones that kind of stuck out to me as being a very important announcement for Copilot, and that is Microsoft Copilot in Viva. What Microsoft is doing here is, in order to not roll out Copilot, but to better understand how Copilot is actually being used in your organization once you roll it out, Microsoft is rolling out a Copilot dashboard powered by Viva. And this is essentially a new tab that's going to show up in Viva Insights. That's going to give you some more information about how your employees are using Copilot today. So examples of that are overall readiness. So who's been enabled, who's using Copilot in Teams meeting, who's using it in chat, who's using it with Outlook, who's using it with Office documents. It's going to kind of give you a tally of how all that stuff's going on. It'll give you a look at what your licenses are, a count of users on eligible update channels. Some other pieces in Copilot dashboard, you're also going to be able to look at adoption. And this, I think, is going to be really the most useful area of this tool. You can also look at impact and sentiment, which we'll talk about in a moment. But you're gonna roll Copilot out to your organization, and you're gonna want to understand, where is it being used: Teams, Outlook, Excel, Word, PowerPoint, OneNote, etc. How many users are using it in those different applications? You're going to want to understand that kind of the key use cases in the document. So like in Word, if you have a large organization, 2,500 people have Copilot, 700 people used it to summarize, 700 documents were summarized with it. 500 draft documents were created in PowerPoint. 500 presentations were created with it. In Outlook, it generated 1,000 email drafts. That's a crazy number that it really could become a reality of just going to Copilot and saying, hey, I need to write an email to my team about this upcoming event. Help me write it. And you give it that much information through the prompt, and then it writes the email, and it gets people excited and engaged about that event. You can change the tone to kind of match your other emails. Copilot can understand that by looking at your other emails and Teams messages. It sends it out to the employees, and it saved you time. And then same thing, what kind of Teams is summarizing meetings, summarizing chat and channel conversations. I actually asked a question about this today, because Copilot being able to summarize channel information rather than just chats is something that is fairly new. And I was trying to understand, does it just summarize one conversation thread? Does it summarize multiple conversation threads? I haven't gotten an answer on that back from Microsoft yet, but I'll share that in a future podcast once we hear a little bit more about that. Again, Holly and I are planning on dipping into Teams Mesh and Premium, some of the premium features that are being rolled out, which actually one of the big announcements that came out of that today as well is that, so if you have Teams Premium, the #1 feature you're probably using it, and the one that I tout is the most valuable feature, is the recap feature. That was not being included with Microsoft Copilot, so they're making you double dip on features, which seems crazy to me. They are bringing Intelligent Recap into Copilot. So if you are only using Intelligent Recap as part of your Teams Premium license, this might be a sell for you to basically be like, well, I'm not going to pay $10 a month for Microsoft Teams Premium and $30 a month for Copilot. Now, because I'm not using the webinar function and I'm not using the branded backgrounds and stuff like that, I really only need the recap feature, or that one employee only needs a recap feature. This is a cost savings, as you don't have to double dip anymore, which is great. Other areas of Copilot dashboard impact. So it gives you there's even an asterisk in the screenshot here, potential time savings from Copilot. They're saying for this organization of 2,500 people was 12,000 hours. Copilot users say that they save 1.2 hours more per week. So I mean, that adds up over time. You're talking about something like 4 hours a month. They're getting back in some cases in larger organizations. I've heard stats around you're saving 20 hours a month. You're getting 20 hours a month back to do other stuff. I think that number is swollen up a little bit. But again, Copilot is very new and it's going to take some more time to understand use cases and where the actual savings are around that. And then the final area is they talk about sentiment in the Copilot dashboard. And this is essentially based off of users taking feedback surveys in Copilot. So we're talking about Copilot helps improve the quality of my work. Copilot helps me spend less mental effort on mundane and repetitive tasks. That one was ranked at 90%. The global benchmark for it is 71%, at least in the screenshot that I'm looking at. Copilot allows me to complete tasks faster. And then Copilot helps me be more productive. I think that at the moment that this is kind of as much as there is there from a survey perspective, I don't have the ability to go in and play with it to see if there's more survey questions or if you can create your own. But it still gives you kind of a measuring stick for how Copilot's being used and how it's helping out in the organization. It'll also, in addition for impact, it'll help you kind of estimate return on investment. So in this screenshot, it says 9,000 hours were saved since December of 2023. It is November of 2023 right now. So this is clearly a splashy screenshot of them estimating this probably a year from now. Again, estimating how many hours were saved per week. And then estimating, or not estimating, but giving you kind of a percentage on respondents feeling how much it improved their day-to-day, and then giving you kind of a user behavioral look at where users are using it to improve meeting effectiveness, content creation, email processing, and give that all to you to kind of look at from an insights perspective. And obviously, this isn't something that all users would likely have access to. This is something that you would give to managers or executives to kind of look at these numbers and better understand, hey, what are we actually getting out of this tool? We bought 2,500 licenses. Do we need 2,500 licenses? Or are there certain segments of the business where this makes the most sense for, and we can scale back and save on cost? I mean, Microsoft wants you, obviously, to spend the $30 per user per month on just the 365 Copilot solution. They also want you to spend the money on all the different Copilot solutions they have out there for the different niches in your organization. So they're not going to want to see people walk away from it. But ultimately, at the end of the day, businesses need to make responsible decisions with how they're using their money. And everyone, again, is going to use Copilot differently. And one of the most important parts to Copilot, we talked about the permissions before, is you're going to need to put Copilot in front of people, but you're also going to need to sit down and do user groups and train people and show them how to use it, show them how to take advantage of Copilot Labs, which is, again, we talked about this a few weeks back on the podcast, the ability to actually go out there and learn how to build prompts. It's not as simple. It's not just a technology that you can roll off there and say, it's here, use it. Because most users won't understand how to use something like this until you show them. This is going back to the days of Google when it first rolled out 25 years ago. There's going to be a lot of people that type something into Copilot and they don't get the response that they intended to get. because either semantic index hasn't found what they're looking for, or they didn't type the right thing in. Like, this is going to be a tool that evolves over time and only gets better. And that's just the nature of these large language models. Um, uh, uh, Anecdote from one of the sit downs I was in today is the presenter was talking about how Twitter and or X and Reddit all shut down their APIs because these large language models were scraping them for information to continue to build those models out. And the anecdote that he gave was humans are amazing. Like, we can do a lot of great stuff, but we can also do a lot of really bad stuff. And that is because these large language models are being fed by human behavior. Is there needs to be, and Microsoft has spent a lot of time building these safeguards on this stuff, is someone's going to type something in the Copilot at some point, and they are going to get something that they were totally not expecting because one of those safeguards didn't catch it. But these early adopters that are using it are going to be the ones that are actually able to help improve the system. And again, it's a whole new experience right now. It's going to be like search engines when they first came out. Is you're not always going to get what you intended, and sometimes you're going to definitely get something that you didn't want. And as time goes by, these are going to get better and better. Copilot is also being added into Viva apps. I won't spend too much time talking about it. We talked about Viva Insights and how that's improving. Viva Goals is going to get some Copilot integration, which will help users generate and refine goals through conversational AI. Viva Engage is going to get some stuff coming into public preview in January of 2024, which will help with tailoring and refining messages, tone, and enhancing the quality of questions being asked through suggested prompts. Viva Learning, this is an area that I think that generative AI can really help with, is being able to find the content that you're looking for a little bit easier. A lot of times when you're looking at these large learning plans, is you're specifically trying to search and find keywords. If there's an article out there and Copilot's able to scrape the entire article, is it may have an easier time finding it. It may also make it easier for your admins to go in and adjust the metadata and the keywords to make that stuff more surfaceable. Copilot and Viva Glint. This should help your HR teams and the different teams that build out kind of like those employee engagement surveys, build those out through creating and asking more thoughtful questions using large language models. Again, this is something that's coming into a private preview in January of 2024. And then we're going to see some more additional pieces being added into Viva Amplify as well. All right, well, that's going to about do it for this week of the podcast. Again, I'm out here for another 2 days in Seattle at Ignite. Tomorrow is day 2 of the keynote stuff, where we're going to start talking a little bit more about kind of AI cloud security. So I'm sure I'll have some more interesting tidbits to share from there in a future podcast or in a future newsletter. This episode was a little bit longer than usual. Usually we try to keep them somewhere between 35 to 50 minutes. I've been recording now for about an hour and 20 minutes. Obviously, the actual length of the podcast is going to be a little bit shorter than that. But if you have any questions or need help with implementing or need training around any of these Copilot solutions, you can contact Virteva. We're a leading IT managed service and security provider and can help your organization with all your IT needs. You can email us at letstalk@virteva.com or visit our website at www.virteva.com. If you want even more Microsoft news, you can sign up for our Microsoft 365 newsletter by visiting our website. The newsletter recaps a handful of topics a month and keeps you in the loop about recent news and announcements. If you got the most recent version of the newsletter that just came out, our November update, that was a very question and answer focused newsletter. about a lot of the questions that we got around. Is Copilot worth it? What is the pricing? So we try to keep it fresh. A lot of times it's the most recent stuff in the news. Sometimes it's just question and answer back and forth. So again, we appreciate everyone that writes in and listens to the podcast. If you want to know more detail or you want us to do a podcast about a specific topic around Microsoft 365 or security, we're all ears. Please. Again, future content that we're planning, kind of did a state of the show update on our Microsoft Copilot Security podcast that we did about a week and a half ago. We are planning on still recapping on the new version of Teams, taking a look at Teams avatars, taking a look at Teams Mesh as well. And we are also planning on doing a little bit around Bing Chat Enterprise, which again is now called Microsoft Copilot. Which there is also a new URL for that at copilot.microsoft.com. So that is your kind of your new Bing Chat Enterprise homepage, rather than going to bing.com/chat. Not a full branding of Bing happening, just adding more Copilot out there, which is powered in part by Bing. All right, again, that's going to do it for this week's episode of Virteva's Let's Talk podcast. If you made it this far, please hit those like and subscribe buttons. That enables us to continue to do these shows. And please email us with any questions or comments that you have on the show, and have a great rest of your day. Take it easy, everyone. Bye.